Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is count. Let's take a look at some of the definitions for this verb. The first way we can use the verb count is to mean to determine the total number of something. This is likely what you think of when you hear the verb count. This can also include the action of going 1, 2, 3, etc. A second way to use the verb count is to mean to include. Let me give you an example of this definition. If we have two people talking and one says, well, how many people did you invite to our gathering? And someone says, well, I invited 5 people. Oh, but 10 if you count spouses. So here, 10 if you include those people's spouses, partners, etc. A third way to use the verb count is to mean to be significant. Maybe you have heard or seen someone write the sentence, your opinion counts. What this sentence is suggesting is your opinion is significant. It's valuable. It matters. And again, this is another way we can use this verb. Count is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing to form counting. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. The base verb count ends with a T sound. So the ed is going to make an id sound. Counted, counted. From the notes on the screen, you might notice that I have a number of phrasal verbs that we're going to walk through today. So I'm not going to offer any other verb tense practice, but I'll try and point those out as we're discussing these. So let's take a look at our first phrasal verb with count. That's count against. It means to negatively affect. Okay? Here's an example of that. Will my lack of a degree count against me? So imagine someone is applying for a particular job and maybe they don't have their high school diploma yet, or they don't have a college degree. They're asking, because I don't have that, will I not get the job? Is it going to negatively affect my chances of getting this position? Another phrasal verb you might hear is count among. It means to include someone or something in a group or category. Here's an example of that. Can I count you among my supporters? This is a question I have heard from different campaigns. So if you're a registered voter, there's a good chance you're getting phone calls, text messages, emails right now as we get closer to the election. And this is, again, a very common question. People want to know, can I include you in my group of supporters? Another phrasal verb you might hear is count down. This could mean to wait impatiently. So impatiently meaning kind of like, come on, get here. I want something to happen sooner rather than later. Or it could mean to wait excitedly for something to happen. Here's an example of this phrasal verb. We are counting down to the day we will have a COVID-19 vaccine. I think this is a true statement or feeling for a lot of people. Many of us are impatient. Some of us are very excited for this future vaccine that's being developed. Another phrasal verb you might hear is count for. This is very similar to the third main definition of count that we looked at earlier. So count for means to be recognized as important, valuable, or worthwhile. Here's an example of that. Experience counts for this new position. We are not as worried about your training. So here, the future employer really values people's prior work experience. They might be less focused on one's degrees or education and training that they've received. The next phrasal verb we're going to look at is to count someone in. It means to include or involve. Here's an example sentence. If you're getting ice cream, count me in. So in this sentence, what I'm saying is, if you're going to go buy ice cream, I want to come with you. I want ice cream too. And that's a true statement. I am always ready for some ice cream. The next phrasal verb we'll look at is count off. It means to say numbers aloud that are spaced a certain way. Here's an example of this. We'll count off into groups of 5. This is a statement I've heard and used in many classes. It's a way to get people who maybe aren't sitting near one another to work together. And so we're just going to go around the room saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then all the ones become a group. The next phrasal verb we're going to look at is count on. It can have 2 different meanings. The first meaning is to depend or rely. Here's an example of that. Can this candidate count on your vote? Again, this is another question I've heard many times over the phone as different campaigns have called me and inquired whether I plan to vote on November 3rd. A second meaning for count on is to mean to expect something to happen and make your plans on that expectation. Here's an example of that. I'm counting on good weather this weekend for our picnic. So I've made plans to eat outside, and I've based those plans on my expectation that the weather is going to be pleasant. The next phrasal verb we're going to look at is count out. It can also have 2 different meanings. First, we'll look at counting someone out. This is going to be the opposite of counting someone in. So if you remember, counting someone in was including someone. So this is going to have the meaning of excluding. Okay? Here's an example sentence. I'm too tired for a movie. You can count me out. So what I'm saying is, don't include me. You go to the movie, I'm going to stay home and go to bed. Another meaning for count out is to count a certain amount of money aloud. Here is an example of that. The bank teller counted out my change. So again, imagine we have a combination of quarters, dimes, nickels, etc. So the bank teller might be saying 25, 35, 40, then pennies, 41, 42, 43. There's your change. The last phrasal verb we're going to look at is count up. It means to add. Here's an example of this usage. Will you count up the number of people who have been invited? So this might be looking at your text messages and then looking through your email to come up with a total. Now let's take a look at some words and phrases that are related to our verb count. The first word we're going to look at is the noun form of this word. Same spelling, same pronunciation. I want to note that the noun form count has a number of different meanings, but most of them are not very common. So I'm going to just highlight one that I think you are more likely to hear. It connects back to the first definition of the verb that we looked at, and that's the act of determining the total number of something. Here's an example of this usage. At last count, there were 15 people registered for the event. So the last time I counted, I arrived at the number 15. I encourage you to look up the word count and look at the other entries for the noun part of this word and see if they feel familiar to you. It's possible you've seen them as you read. But again, I don't think they're so common. I want to focus on things that I do think you might hear. And the next thing I think you might hear is the phrase "and counting." Generally, this is not going to be at the beginning of a sentence, but it's going to describe something that is increasing. So let me give you an example. In the US, there are 205,000 COVID-19 deaths and counting. So I'm sorry to say this is a very sad sentence, but if you're following the news, each day there are reports of more deaths that are related to COVID-19. So unfortunately, the number of deaths continues to increase. The next thing I want to point out is an adjective. It's countable. It means able to be counted or included. Here's an example of this usage. Is that countable income for determining Social Security benefits? Here, this is going to be more connected to the included piece. So, do I include this income as I try and determine what benefits someone may receive? The opposite of countable is uncountable. You might recognize that prefix un, which means not. So our definition here is not able to be counted. Here is an example of that. There are so many uncountable costs of this pandemic. So there are so many things in a negative way of the costs, different effects it's having on people and families, businesses, schools, nonprofits, governments, etc. That it's just not possible to truly count the total cost. I'll point out for any current ESL students who might be studying grammar, we tend to use countable and uncountable to describe nouns. So, and that becomes important. It connects to our rules for using a and an, less and fewer, some other words as well. So you might recognize that. And again, it comes back to that idea, is this something I'm able to count or am I not able to count? The last word I'm going to leave you with today is recount. You might recognize the prefix, right, of doing something again. Recount could be a verb, just like, and we would use it in a rather similar way as we have with count. But I think you might be more likely to hear the noun form used. And the noun meaning is just the act of counting something again. Here's an example of that. If election results are very close, there will be a recount. It means they will go back to the ballots and say, this person voted for candidate A, this for candidate B, this for candidate C, and they keep counting again. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.